A millionaire sees his ex-girlfriend in a job line with 4 children identical to him, all with the same look and unmistakable features. Stunned, he approaches, unable to believe what he sees, wondering if they are really his children. And what has happened during all these years of separation, his life is about to change forever. The sleek Tesla Model S glided to a stop in front of the Manhattan Community Center, its pristine white exterior reflecting the warm spring sunshine. Inside, John Chen adjusted his Armani tie, a habit he'd developed during his years in Hong Kong, and checked his Patek Philippe watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes. The irony wasn't lost on him. A billionaire CEO sitting in a community center parking lot, about to walk into a job fair. But this was exactly the kind of opportunity he was looking for. After 5 years of building his tech empire in Asia, John had returned to New York with plans to expand his company's presence in the American market. His strategy? Start by understanding the local workforce from the ground up. He'd done the same in Singapore, and it had paid off brilliantly. The community center's job fair seemed like the perfect place to observe potential employees in their natural habitat. At 42, John carried himself with the confident air of someone who had conquered every challenge life had thrown his way. His dark hair was precisely trimmed, with just a touch of distinguished gray at the temples. Success had treated him well, and he knew it. The past 5 years had transformed him from a promising entrepreneur into a force to be reckoned within the tech industry. As he stepped out of his car, John's Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete. The community center was a modest 2-story brick building, its faded sign and weather-worn exterior a stark contrast to the gleaming skyscrapers he usually frequented. A line of people had already formed outside, some clutching folders containing resumes, others nervously checking their phones. John took his place at the end of the line, earning curious glances from those around him. His bespoke suit and commanding presence made him stick out like a peacock in a chicken coop. He didn't mind. He was used to standing out. Besides, he told himself, this was valuable market research. The line shuffled forward slowly, and John found himself studying the faces around him. Each person had a story, he knew, though he doubted any were as successful as his own. He'd started with nothing but a brilliant idea and unshakable determination. Now he was worth billions, with offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo. New York was just the next logical step. Inside, the community center hummed with nervous energy. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the institutional beige walls. Folding tables had been set up in rows, each staffed by recruiters from various companies. The air conditioning struggled against the heat generated by so many bodies in the space, creating a slight stuffiness that made John glad he'd left his suit jacket in the car. As he waited, John pulled out his phone to check his emails. Another acquisition offer from a Silicon Valley competitor, a meeting request from his board of directors, updates on his New York penthouse renovation. He was so engrossed in his digital world that he almost missed the sound. A child's laugh, bright and clear as a bell, cutting through the murmur of adult voices. He looked up, more out of instinct than interest, and that's when his carefully ordered world tilted on its axis. About 20 feet ahead in the line stood a woman with honey blonde hair, pulled back in a messy bun. She wore simple jeans and a navy blazer that had seen better days, but it was her profile that made his heart stop. Even after 5 years, he would know that face anywhere. Emily. She was holding the hand of a small girl who couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, while 3 other children clustered around her. As John watched, frozen in place, one of the children, a boy with a serious expression, turned to look directly at him. The boy's face was like looking into a mirror of his own childhood photos. The world seemed to narrow to a tunnel. All sound fading except for the thundering of his own heartbeat. These children, they couldn't be, but the timing and their features. John Chen, the man who had built an empire, who prided himself on always being in control, felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. For the first time in his adult life, he had absolutely no idea what to do next. The line moved forward again, and John moved with it mechanically, his mind racing. Every step brought him closer to a reality he had never imagined, to consequences he had never considered, to a past he thought he'd left firmly behind. As he watched Emily comfort the youngest child, who was growing restless, he realized that all his billions, all his success, all his carefully laid plans meant nothing in the face of this moment. Because in this fluorescent-lit community center, surrounded by job seekers and the scent of coffee from a nearby vending machine, John Chen was about to confront the biggest mistake of his life and possibly discover the most valuable things he'd ever lost. Emily Thompson felt the gentle tug on her sleeve before she heard the whisper. "Mom, I'm hungry," Alex complained, his green eyes, so like his father's, looking up at her imploringly. She smoothed his dark hair, buying time as she considered how to handle yet another challenge in this already difficult day. "Just a little longer, sweetie," she whispered back, reaching into her worn leather bag for the last granola bar she'd packed. As she broke it into pieces to share among her 4 children, she tried not to think about the dwindling contents of her kitchen cabinets at home. This job fair had to yield something. After losing her position at the publishing house due to downsizing, her savings were running dangerously low. Sarah, the oldest at 5.5, took charge of distributing the granola pieces to her siblings with the serious determination that sometimes made Emily's heart ache. No child should have to grow up so fast. Yet here was her firstborn, already showing signs of being the responsible eldest sister, making sure Lily didn't drop her share and that Ethan, lost in his thoughts as usual, actually ate his portion. The line inched forward, and Emily mentally rehearsed her elevator pitch once again. 15 years of editorial experience, proficient in multiple style guides, excellent project management skills. She'd repeated these points so many times. They had started to lose meaning, like words said over and over until they became just sounds. "Mom," Ethan's quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. "That man is staring at us." Emily's maternal instincts kicked in immediately. She turned, ready to confront whoever was making her children uncomfortable, and felt the world stop spinning. John Chen stood less than 20 feet away, looking exactly like the photos she occasionally saw of him in business magazines, only more real and somehow more devastating. The same sharp jawline, the same confident stance, the same perfectly tailored suits that had once made her tease him about being too fashion-conscious. But his face now held an expression she had never seen before. Absolute shock. Their eyes met, and 5 years of carefully constructed walls threatened to crumble. Emily's hand instinctively tightened around Alex's, while her other arm drew Lily closer. The twins, always sensitive to her moods, pressed against her sides. John took a step forward, then another, as if drawn by an invisible force. The other people in line seemed to fade away, leaving just this impossible moment suspended in time. Emily watched as his gaze moved from child to child, taking in Sarah's determined stance, Ethan's thoughtful expression, Alex's boundless energy, and Lily's artistic soul, all reflected in features that mirrored his own. "Emily?" His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with questions he seemed afraid to ask. She straightened her spine, summoning strength she wasn't sure she possessed. "Hello, John." The words came out steadier than she felt. Years of practice at holding herself together paying off in this crucial moment. "These," he gestured helplessly at the children, his usual eloquence deserting him. "Your children," Emily confirmed, watching the impact of those 2 words hit him like a physical blow. "All 4 of them." Sarah looked between the adults, her young face showing a wisdom beyond her years. "Mom," she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "It's okay, sweetheart," Emily assured her, though nothing felt okay at that moment. The air between her and John crackled with unspoken words and unexpressed emotions. "Why didn't you?" John started, then stopped, seemingly realizing the absurdity of asking such a question in the middle of a job fair, surrounded by strangers. "They tried," Emily said simply, letting 5 years of unanswered emails, returned letters, and ignored phone calls hang between them. "Many times." John's face drained of color as the implications sank in. He opened his mouth to speak again, but was interrupted by a volunteer calling out, "Next group, please step forward." Emily gathered her children closer. "That's us," she said, more to them than to John. "Come on, kids." "Wait." John's voice was urgent now, almost desperate. "Please, we need to talk." Emily hesitated, torn between the practical need to continue, her job search, and the weight of this moment. Looking at her children's curious faces, she made a decision. "I have to do this first," she said firmly. "The children need to eat." Something flickered across John's face. Pain, guilt, understanding, or perhaps all three. He pulled out a business card, offering it with a slightly trembling hand. "My number. Please, Emily. Call me when you're done." She accepted the card, careful not to let their fingers touch. "We'll see," she replied, neither a promise nor a rejection. Then she guided her children toward the recruiter's table, feeling John's gaze boring into her back with every step. The sleek Tesla Model S glided to a stop in front of the Manhattan Community Center, its pristine white exterior reflecting the warm spring sunshine. Inside, John Chen adjusted his Armani tie, a habit he'd developed during his years in Hong Kong, and checked his Patek Philippe watch for the 3rd time in as many minutes. The irony wasn't lost on him. A billionaire CEO sitting in a community center parking lot, about to walk into a job fair. But this was exactly the kind of opportunity he was looking for. After 5 years of building his tech empire in Asia, John had returned to New York with plans to expand his company's presence in the American market. His strategy? Start by understanding the local workforce from the ground up. He'd done the same in Singapore, and it had paid off brilliantly. The community center's job fair seemed like the perfect place to observe potential employees in their natural habitat. At 42, John carried himself with the confident air of someone who had conquered every challenge life had thrown his way. His dark hair was precisely trimmed, with just a touch of distinguished gray at the temples. Success had treated him well, and he knew it. The past 5 years had transformed him from a promising entrepreneur into a force to be reckoned within the tech industry. As he stepped out of his car, John's Italian leather shoes clicked against the concrete. The community center was a modest 2-story brick building, its faded sign and weather-worn exterior a stark contrast to the gleaming skyscrapers he usually frequented. A line of people had already formed outside, some clutching folders containing resumes, others nervously checking their phones. John took his place at the end of the line, earning curious glances from those around him. His bespoke suit and commanding presence made him stick out like a peacock in a chicken coop. He didn't mind. He was used to standing out. Besides, he told himself this was valuable market research. The line shuffled forward slowly, and John found himself studying the faces around him. Each person had a story, he knew, though he doubted any were as successful as his own. He'd started with nothing but a brilliant idea and unshakable determination. Now he was worth billions, with offices in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo. New York was just the next logical step. Inside, the community center hummed with nervous energy. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a harsh glow on the institutional beige walls. Folding tables had been set up in rows, each staffed by recruiters from various companies. The air conditioning struggled against the heat generated by so many bodies in the space, creating a slight stuffiness that made John glad he'd left his suit jacket in the car. As he waited, John pulled out his phone to check his emails. Another acquisition offer from a Silicon Valley competitor, a meeting request from his board of directors, updates on his New York penthouse renovation. He was so engrossed in his digital world that he almost missed the sound. A child's laugh, bright and clear as a bell, cutting through the murmur of adult voices. He looked up, more out of instinct than interest, and that's when his carefully ordered world tilted on its axis. About 20 feet ahead in the line stood a woman with honey blonde hair, pulled back in a messy bun. She wore simple jeans and a navy blazer that had seen better days, but it was her profile that made his heart stop. Even after 5 years, he would know that face anywhere. Emily. She was holding the hand of a small girl who couldn't have been more than 4 or 5, while 3 other children clustered around her. As John watched, frozen in place, one of the children, a boy with a serious expression, turned to look directly at him. The boy's face was like looking into a mirror of his own childhood photos. The world seemed to narrow to a tunnel. All sound fading except for the thundering of his own heartbeat. These children, they couldn't be, but the timing and their features. John Chen, the man who had built an empire, who prided himself on always being in control, felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. For the first time in his adult life, he had absolutely no idea what to do next. The line moved forward again, and John moved with it mechanically, his mind racing. Every step brought him closer to a reality he had never imagined, to consequences he had never considered, to a past he thought he'd left firmly behind. As he watched Emily comfort the youngest child, who was growing restless, he realized that all his billions, all his success, all his carefully laid plans meant nothing in the face of this moment. Because in this fluorescent-lit community center, surrounded by job seekers and the scent of coffee from a nearby vending machine, John Chen was about to confront the biggest mistake of his life and possibly discover the most valuable things he'd ever lost. Emily Thompson felt the gentle tug on her sleeve before she heard the whisper. "Mom, I'm hungry," Alex complained, his green eyes, so like his father's, looking up at her imploringly. She smoothed his dark hair, buying time as she considered how to handle yet another challenge in this already difficult day. "Just a little longer, sweetie," she whispered back, reaching into her worn leather bag for the last granola bar she'd packed. As she broke it into pieces to share among her 4 children, she tried not to think about the dwindling contents of her kitchen cabinets at home. This job fair had to yield something. After losing her position at the publishing house due to downsizing, her savings were running dangerously low. Sarah, the oldest at 5.5, took charge of distributing the granola pieces to her siblings with the serious determination that sometimes made Emily's heart ache. No child should have to grow up so fast. Yet here was her firstborn, already showing signs of being the responsible eldest sister, making sure Lily didn't drop her share and that Ethan, lost in his thoughts as usual, actually ate his portion. The line inched forward, and Emily mentally rehearsed her elevator pitch once again. 15 years of editorial experience, proficient in multiple style guides, excellent project management skills. She'd repeated these points so many times. They had started to lose meaning, like words said over and over until they became just sounds. "Mom," Ethan's quiet voice interrupted her thoughts. "That man is staring at us." Emily's maternal instincts kicked in immediately. She turned, ready to confront whoever was making her children uncomfortable, and felt the world stop spinning. John Chen stood less than 20 feet away, looking exactly like the photos she occasionally saw of him in business magazines, only more real and somehow more devastating. The same sharp jawline, the same confident stance, the same perfectly tailored suits that had once made her tease him about being too fashion-conscious. But his face now held an expression she had never seen before. Absolute shock. Their eyes met, and 5 years of carefully constructed walls threatened to crumble. Emily's hand instinctively tightened around Alex's, while her other arm drew Lily closer. The twins, always sensitive to her moods, pressed against her sides. John took a step forward, then another, as if drawn by an invisible force. The other people in line seemed to fade away, leaving just this impossible moment suspended in time. Emily watched as his gaze moved from child to child, taking in Sarah's determined stance, Ethan's thoughtful expression, Alex's boundless energy, and Lily's artistic soul, all reflected in features that mirrored his own. "Emily?" His voice was barely a whisper, heavy with questions he seemed afraid to ask. She straightened her spine, summoning strength she wasn't sure she possessed. "Hello, John." The words came out steadier than she felt. Years of practice at holding herself together paying off in this crucial moment. "These." He gestured helplessly at the children, his usual eloquence deserting him. "Your children," Emily confirmed, watching the impact of those two words hit him like a physical blow. "All 4 of them." Sarah looked between the adults, her young face showing a wisdom beyond her years. "Mom?" she asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. "It's okay, sweetheart," Emily assured her, though nothing felt okay at that moment. The air between her and John crackled with unspoken words and unexpressed emotions. "Why didn't you?" John started, then stopped, seemingly realizing the absurdity of asking such a question in the middle of a job fair, surrounded by strangers. "They tried," Emily said simply, letting 5 years of unanswered emails, returned letters, and ignored phone calls hang between them. "Many times." John's face drained of color as the implications sank in. He opened his mouth to speak again, but was interrupted by a volunteer calling out, "Next group, please step forward." Emily gathered her children closer. "That's us," she said, more to them than to John. "Come on, kids." "Wait." John's voice was urgent now, almost desperate. "Please, we need to talk." Emily hesitated, torn between the practical need to continue, her job search, and the weight of this moment. Looking at her children's curious faces, she made a decision. "I have to do this first," she said firmly. "The children need to eat." Something flickered across John's face. Pain, guilt, understanding, or perhaps all 3. He pulled out a business card, offering it with a slightly trembling hand. "My number. Please, Emily. Call me when you're done." She accepted the card, careful not to let their fingers touch. "We'll see," she replied, neither a promise nor a rejection. Then she guided her children toward the recruiter's table, feeling John's gaze boring into her back with every step. "Thank you," he said softly, earning a shy smile from his youngest daughter. The morning continued its choreographed dance, with John trying to find his place in it. He learned that Sarah needed her hair braided just so, that Ethan preferred his toast barely toasted, that Alex couldn't stand when different foods touched on his plate, and that Lily hummed the alphabet song while getting dressed. As Emily prepared to shepherd everyone out the door for school, John spoke up. "I could drive them, if that's okay." Emily hesitated, looking at the children. "What do you think, guys? Would you like to ride in Daddy's car?" The word Daddy hung in the air, new and uncertain. Alex's eyes lit up at the prospect of riding in the Tesla, while Ethan looked thoughtful. Sarah crossed her arms. "Only if Mum comes too," she declared. "Of course," John agreed quickly. "We'll all go together." The ride to school was an education in itself. John learned that Alex could talk non-stop about dinosaurs for 10 straight minutes, that Lily got carsick if she tried to draw while riding, that Ethan preferred to watch the world go by in silence, and that Sarah kept careful watch. over all of her siblings from her position in the back seat. At the school drop-off, John watched as Emily gave each child a specific goodbye ritual, a special handshake for Alex, a book recommendation exchange with Ethan, a butterfly kiss for Lily, and a proud nod for Sarah. He stood awkwardly to the side until Sarah turned to him. "You need to learn the goodbyes," she informed him seriously. "They're important." "Will you teach me?" he asked, matching her solemnity. She considered this for a moment. "Maybe, if you come back tomorrow." "I'll be here," he promised. After the children disappeared into the school building, Emily turned to him. "I have 3 job interviews today." "Let me help," John said immediately. "I have connections." "No." Emily's voice was firm. "I need to do this on my own. I've been doing it on my own for 5 years. John absorbed this rebuke, understanding the pride and strength behind it. "Then let me at least pick them up from school. I'll learn the after-school routine, please." Emily studied him for a long moment. "They have activities. Sarah has dance class, Ethan has chess club, Alex has soccer practice, and Lily has art lessons." "I'll figure it out. I'll make a spreadsheet, set reminders." "It's not about spreadsheets, John," Emily interrupted. "It's about knowing that Ethan needs quiet time after chess club to decompress. It's about remembering that Alex has to change into his soccer clothes in the car or he'll be late. It's about carrying spare art supplies for Lily because she goes through them so quickly. It's about 1,000 little details that make their lives work." John felt the weight of all he had missed, all he needed to learn. "Teach me," he said simply. "I want to learn it all." Emily's expression softened slightly. "Start with today. Pick them up at 3. Sarah will make sure you don't forget anyone. She always does. But John," her voice turned serious, "don't make promises you can't keep. They've had enough disappointment." As John watched Emily walk away, heading to her first interview, he pulled out his phone. With a few quick calls, he rearranged his entire schedule, postponing meetings and delegating tasks. Then he opened a new document and began typing. "Sarah likes her hair braided just so. Ethan, toast barely toasted. Alex, foods can't touch. Lily hums the alphabet." He had built an empire by paying attention to details. Now he would learn these new, more important ones, one small step at a time. John arrived at the school 45 minutes early, parking his Tesla in a spot that offered a clear view of the exit. His laptop sat open beside him, displaying a color-coded schedule he'd created during the day. He'd approached this challenge like any other business problem, with meticulous planning and attention to detail. But children, as he was about to learn, rarely followed spreadsheets. The dismissal bell rang at 3 o'clock sharp, and students began pouring out of the building. John stepped out of his car, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. Sarah emerged. First, her backpack clutched tightly against her chest. When she spotted him, she didn't smile, but she did walk directly to him. "Alex got in trouble today," she reported, her voice carrying the weight of eldest sibling responsibility. "He's talking to his teacher, and Lily's crying because someone said her drawing was silly." John felt his carefully planned schedule starting to crumble before it even began. "What about Ethan? Chess club got cancelled. He's upset because he was supposed to play against Tommy today." Running a multi-billion-dollar company suddenly seemed simple compared to this. "Okay," John said, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Let's handle one thing at a time. Where's Lily?" "I'll get her," Sarah said with a sigh that seemed far too old for her years. "You should go find Alex, room 103. And remember, don't be mad at him. He gets scared when grown-ups are mad." John headed into the school, following the numbered rooms until he found 103. Through the window, he could see Alex sitting at a desk, his legs swinging nervously while a teacher spoke to him. John knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Chen," the teacher said, recognizing him from the morning drop-off. "I'm Ms. Martinez. Alex had a difficult day today." Alex's shoulders hunched, and John felt a protective surge he hadn't known he was capable of. What happened? "He was disrupting class by talking about dinosaurs during math lessons," Ms. Martinez explained. "When I asked him to focus on his work, he became upset and knocked his books off his desk." John looked at his son, seeing not defiance, but anxiety in his posture. He remembered Emily's words about Alex's energy, his curiosity. "The dinosaurs," he said carefully, "were they related to the math problems?" Alex's head shot up. "I was trying to explain that if a T-Rex was 20 feet tall and a Velociraptor was 6 feet tall, then the T-Rex was more than 3 times bigger. But she said we were supposed to be doing multiplication tables instead." John couldn't help but smile. "That sounds like multiplication to me." He turned to Ms. Martinez. "Maybe we could find a way to incorporate Alex's interests into the lessons. I'd be happy to work with him at home on dinosaur-themed math problems." The teacher seemed surprised but nodded. "That's actually a creative solution. Alex, would you like that?" Alex's face lit up. "Can we calculate how many velociraptors it would take to equal the weight of one brachiosaurus?" "We'll start tonight," John promised, feeling a warm glow as Alex's smile widened. When they emerged from the classroom, they found Sarah waiting with a still sniffling Lily and a subdued Ethan. John checked his watch. They were already 15 minutes behind schedule. "Sarah has dance in 20 minutes, Ethan reminded him. "But Lily has art class across town," Sarah added. "And I need to change for soccer," Alex piped up. John felt panic rising. How did Emily manage this every day? He took a deep breath, remembering how he handled complex business negotiations. "Okay, team meeting. Everyone in the car." Once they were all seated, John turned to face his children. "Here's what we're going to do. Sarah and Lily, you're both going to your activities. Alex, we'll have to skip soccer today." He held up a hand as Alex started to protest. "But I promise we'll practice twice as long this weekend. Ethan, since chess club was cancelled, would you like to be my navigator? I need help figuring out the best routes between Sarah's dance studio and Lily's art class." Ethan's eyes lit up at the prospect of solving a logistics problem. "We should drop Sarah first because her studio is closer," he said, already calculating. "Then we can take the back roads to Lily's art school to avoid traffic." "Perfect," John said, feeling a small victory. "Everyone okay with this plan?" He got varying degrees of nodding, though Alex still looked disappointed. "Hey, buddy," John said softly. "How about while we wait for your sisters, you teach me about dinosaur math?" The drive to the dance studio was filled with Alex's enthusiastic explanations of herbivore herd sizes and carnivore hunting patterns, all somehow related to multiplication. Ethan occasionally corrected his brother's calculations, while Lily's sniffles gradually subsided as she became absorbed in drawing in her sketchbook. Sarah sat silently, but John caught her watching him in the rearview mirror, evaluating his handling of the situation. They managed to get Sarah to dance class only 5 minutes late, and Lily made it to art with time to spare. As John sat in the art school parking lot with his sons, watching Alex draw dinosaurs and helping Ethan create a more efficient schedule for tomorrow, his phone buzzed with messages from his office. Urgent meetings, pressing decisions, market updates, all the things that used to be his entire world. He switched off his phone. "Dad." Ethan's voice was hesitant on the new word. "I think I found a better route that could save us 12 minutes tomorrow. Want to see?" "Show me," John said, feeling something shift in his chest as Ethan scooted closer with his carefully drawn map. In the back seat, Alex was explaining to his dinosaurs why he missed soccer practice, promising them they'd all practice together. On the weekend, His empire could wait. Right now, he had more important things to learn. The apartment smelled of pasta sauce when Emily returned home from her interviews, her professional blazer slightly wilted from the day's heat. She paused in the doorway, taking in the scene before her. John sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by children and schoolwork, his designer shirt sleeves rolled up and a smudge of red sauce on his collar. And that's why a stegosaurus would need to eat 42 pounds of plants every day, Alex was saying, scribbling numbers in his math notebook. Very good, John replied. Now can you convert that to kilograms for your homework? Emily set her bag down quietly, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Sarah noticed her first, as usual, and the others quickly followed. Mom! Lily ran to her, brandishing a new painting. Look what I made in art class. It's our family. Emily examined the watercolor, her throat tightening at the 6 figures Lily had painted. 4 small ones and 2 tall ones standing close, together. She felt John's eyes on her, but couldn't bring herself to meet his gaze. How were the interviews? He asked carefully. Promising, she replied. The publishing house in Brooklyn seemed especially interested. She didn't add that the salary they'd mentioned would barely cover the children's basic needs. She didn't have to. The stack of bills on the counter spoke volumes. I made dinner, John said, gesturing to the stove where a pot of pasta sauce simmered, though I had help from my excellent sous chefs. I showed him how to make it like you do, Sarah stated proudly, with extra garlic. And I only spilled a little bit, Alex added, pointing to a red stain on the floor that someone had clearly tried to clean up. Emily felt tears threatening and blinked them back. Thank you, all of you. Let me change, and then we can eat. In her bedroom, Emily took a moment to collect herself. She could hear the children's voices through the wall, mixed with John's deeper tones, creating a harmony she'd imagined countless times over the past 5 years. It was both wonderful and terrifying. When she returned to the kitchen, the table was set, imperfectly, with mismatched plates and paper napkins, but set nonetheless. The children had already taken their usual seats, leaving 2 chairs side by side for their parents. Dinner was a symphony of overlapping conversations. Lily described every color she'd mixed in art class, while Alex expounded on his dinosaur-based mathematics. Ethan quietly explained his new schedule optimization plan, and Sarah watched everything with her usual protective awareness. After dinner, as the children got ready for bed, Emily found herself alone with John in the kitchen. He was washing dishes, probably for the first time in years, she thought wryly, noting his awkward handling of the sponge. We need to talk, she said softly. John nodded, drying his hands. The balcony. The apartment's small balcony was barely big enough for 2 people, but it offered relative privacy. The city lights twinkled around them as they stood in the cooling evening air. You can't just walk back into their lives and then disappear. Again, Emily began, her voice firm despite her racing heart. They're not a company you can acquire and then sell when things get difficult. I know that, John replied, his hands gripping the railing. I'm not going anywhere, Emily. I've already started reorganizing my entire company structure. I'm delegating more, setting up remote work protocols. It's not about your company, Emily interrupted. It's about them. About knowing that Alex needs someone to run with him when he has too much energy. About understanding that Ethan processes emotions differently and needs space sometimes. About recognizing when Lily's art changes because she's worried about something. About seeing how much weight Sarah carries trying to be strong for everyone else. John was quiet for a long moment. Tell me about when they were born, he finally said. Tell me everything I missed. Emily closed her eyes, memories washing over her. Sarah came first in the middle of a thunderstorm. I was alone in the delivery room. Your mother was stuck in traffic. She was so tiny, but she came out looking at the world like she was ready to take charge of it. Like she does now, John murmured. The twins were a surprise. I was working 2 jobs trying to make ends meet. When the doctor said there were 2 heartbeats, she shook her head. Your mother moved in for 3 months to help. Ethan was quiet from the start, always watching. Alex came out screaming and hasn't stopped moving since. And Lily. Lily. Emily's voice softened. Lily was born the day after your mother died. I think she was holding on, waiting to meet her last grandchild. The nurses let me set up a little art gallery of the other kids' drawings in my hospital room. It seemed right somehow. John's hand found hers on the railing, and for once she didn't pull away. I'm so sorry, Emily, not just for leaving, but for not listening when you tried to tell me, for being so focused on building something big that I missed building something real. They are real, Emily said. They're real, and they're wonderful, and they're hurt, John, even if they don't all know it yet. Sarah remembers waiting for you to call on her birthdays. Ethan's already building walls to protect himself. Alex throws himself into everything, like he's trying to prove he's worth staying for. And Lily draws a father into every family picture, even though she never met you. Tell me how to fix it, John pleaded. Tell me what to do. Emily turned to face him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Be here. Not just today or this week, but every day. Learn them, love them. Let them learn you, even the parts that aren't perfect, and understand that trust, all of our trust, will have to be earned. Inside, they could hear the children getting ready for bed. Lily's voice drifted out, asking for a story. Alex was arguing about 5 more minutes. Ethan's quiet footsteps padded down the hall. Mom? Sarah appeared at the balcony door. It's story time. Emily squeezed John's hand once before letting go. Coming, sweetheart. She paused at the door, looking back at him. Would you like to join us? John's face lit up with hope. I'd like that very much. As they headed inside to join their children, Emily felt something shift between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The road ahead would be long and undoubtedly difficult, but for the first time in 5 years, they were walking it together. John's phone began buzzing at 5 a.m. with urgent messages from his Hong Kong office. He slipped out onto the balcony of his penthouse, careful not to wake the silence of early morning as he dialed into the conference call. Chen-san, we need your decision on the Singapore merger, his VP of operations insisted. The board is getting nervous about your sudden unavailability. John watched the sunrise paint the city skyline in shades of pink and gold, thinking of 4 children who would be waking up soon, expecting him to remember how they liked their breakfast. The merger can wait, he said firmly. I'm reorganizing my priorities. But sir, the shareholders will understand that even CEOs have personal lives. John's voice carried the authority that had built his empire. I'm not abandoning the company. I'm just ensuring its future doesn't come at the cost of my family's present. After ending the call, John pulled up his calendar. The day ahead was a complex choreography of business and family obligations. Board meetings, school pickup, quarterly reports, soccer practice, investor calls, and a parent-teacher conference all competed for his attention. He arrived at Emily's apartment by 7 a.m., armed with fresh bagels and a determination to master the morning routine. The sight that greeted him when Emily opened the door made his corporate challenges seem simple in comparison. Lily sat crying at the kitchen table, refusing to wear the shoes Emily had picked out. Alex was running circles around the living room, still in his pajamas, while Ethan methodically packed and repacked his backpack, ensuring every item was in its precise place. Sarah stood in the middle of it all, attempting to direct traffic like a tiny air traffic controller. The pink shoes are at Tommy's house, Sarah reported to her mother. She left them there during the play date. That's why she's crying. John set down the bagels and knelt beside Lily. What if, he said carefully, We picked out different shoes today, and I promised to get the pink ones back for you." Lily's sobs quieted to hiccups. "But they're my lucky shoes. I have an art show today." "Ah," John said, understanding dawning. He glanced at Emily, who nodded slightly. "What if I came to your art show? Would that be lucky enough?" Lily's eyes widened. "You'd come? Really? Really? I'll even wear pink socks to make up for your shoes." A small smile broke through Lily's tears. "Promise?" "Pinky promise," John said solemnly, holding out his little finger. As Lily's tiny finger wrapped around his, he felt something in his chest tighten. The morning proceeded in a whirlwind of activity. John found himself juggling phones while helping Alex find his missing dinosaur sock, reviewing quarterly projections while braiding Sarah's hair, still not quite right, but getting better, and scheduling board meetings around school pickup times. By the time they piled into his Tesla for the school run, John had received 17 urgent emails, 32 text messages, and 5 voicemails from his executive team. He ignored them all in favor of listening to Ethan explain the optimal traffic pattern for their route to school. "If we take Fifth Avenue, we encounter approximately 37% more red lights," Ethan explained seriously. "The side streets are more efficient, especially on Tuesdays." That's my brilliant boy," John said proudly, following Ethan's suggested route. He caught Emily's slight smile in the passenger seat and felt a warm glow of approval. After dropping the children off, John headed to his office, his mind still off at school. He walked into the board meeting 20 minutes late, his normally immaculate suit slightly rumpled from morning hugs and with a small smear of peanut butter on his sleeve. "Mr. Chen," his CFO began, "we need to discuss the impact of your recent changes in availability." John looked around the boardroom at the concerned faces of his executive team. These were people who had helped him build his company from the ground up, who had followed him across continents in pursuit of success. "Let me tell you about my children," he said, pulling out his phone to show them a picture from that morning. "This is Sarah. She's 5 and already shows more leadership potential than half our management team. Ethan and Alex are the twins. Ethan's logistics skills could teach our operations department a thing or two, and Alex's energy could power half of Manhattan. And Lily, she has an art show today that I won't miss for anything, not even this meeting." The room was silent for a moment. Before his CMO spoke up, "My daughter had an art show last month. I sent my assistant with flowers." "And how did that make her feel?" John asked quietly. The CMO looked down at his hands. "She stopped showing me her drawings after that." "We've all been pursuing a certain kind of success," John continued. "I'm not suggesting we stop. I'm suggesting we redefine it. I want this company to be proof that you can build something extraordinary without sacrificing everything else that matters." He pulled up the reorganization plan he'd worked on until midnight. "Here's how we're going to do it. We'll implement flexible work hours, improve our parental leave policies, and create a culture that values family time as much as face time. I'll start by example. I'll be leaving at 2:30 today to attend an art show. Anyone who wants to join me is welcome." The meeting that followed was unlike any other in the company's history. Instead of just discussing profits and market share, they talked about their children, their missed moments, their hopes to do better. By the end, 3 executives had pictures of their kids on their desks for the first time, and John's assistant had a new mandate. Family obligations would be treated with the same priority as business ones. At 2:25, John stood up from his desk, straightened his pink socks, and headed out to prove to his daughter that sometimes new luck could be better than old luck. He had 5 urgent calls to return and a major deal hanging in the balance. But none of that mattered more than keeping his promise to a little girl who was just beginning to believe in him again. The elementary school gymnasium had been transformed into an art gallery with children's artwork displayed on makeshift walls of colored paper. Lily stood nervously by her section, her small hand clutching John's as she waited for Emily to arrive with her siblings. "Tell me about your paintings," John encouraged, taking in the vibrant collection before them. His heart caught at the recurring theme: family portraits, each one featuring 6 figures, each one showing what Lily had dreamed of for so long. "This one is us having a picnic," Lily explained, pointing to a watercolor filled with bright colors and joy. "And this one is us at the beach. I've never been to the beach, but Sarah told me about it, and this one..." She hesitated before continuing, "This one is what I wished for on my last birthday." The painting showed all 6 of them together in what looked like a living room, much larger than their current apartment. John was reading a story to the children while Emily looked on, smiling. The detail that struck him most was how she'd painted his face, not from photos or imagination, but from her recent memories of him, complete with the way he furrowed his brow when concentrating. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "Lily." Alex's voice carried across the gymnasium as he ran toward them, Emily and the others following at a more sedate pace. "Did you show Dad the dinosaur one?" "Not yet," Lily brightened, pulling John toward another painting. This one showed a family of dinosaurs, 2 large ones and 4 smaller ones, all clearly meant to represent their family. "Alex helped me get the proportions right," she explained proudly. "The Tyrannosaurus Rex family unit typically showed strong parental bonds," Alex added seriously, slipping into what John had come to think of as his dinosaur expert mode. "Though not as strong as ours," he added, wrapping an arm around Lily's shoulders. Ethan approached the artwork with his usual analytical eye. "The use of warm colors creates an emotional response," he observed. "And the positioning of the figures suggests familial connectivity. It's very effective, Lily." Sarah said nothing, but she stood close to her sister, ready to defend against any potential criticism. John had noticed how she did this for all her siblings, always watching, always protecting. "These are wonderful," Emily said warmly, arriving at their little group. She wore a simple dress that John recognized from their college days, somehow made more beautiful by the years between. "Then and now, you've captured everyone perfectly." Other families moved around them, admiring the children's artwork, but John found himself focused entirely on his own family's dynamic. He watched as Alex bounced from piece to piece, his enthusiasm infectious. Ethan stood slightly apart, observing everything with quiet intensity. Sarah maintained her protective stance while secretly sneaking proud looks at her sister. And Lily glowed with the joy of having both her parents there to see her work. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen," Lily's art teacher approached them with a smile. "Your daughter has quite a talent." Neither John nor Emily corrected the assumption about their marital status. "Yes, she does," John agreed, feeling a surge of paternal pride that still felt new and wonderful. "I was wondering if we could submit some of her work to the district art competition," the teacher continued, "particularly this piece." She gestured to a painting they hadn't looked at yet. The artwork in question showed 2 hands reaching toward each other, reminiscent of Michelangelo's creation of Adam, but with a child's interpretation. One hand was clearly meant to be a father's, strong and somewhat uncertain, while the other was small and hopeful. Between them floated 4 smaller hands, creating a bridge of connection. "It's called Finding Father," Lily said softly. "I painted it after you came back." John knelt down to Lily's level, not caring about his expensive suit pants on the gymnasium floor. "Would you like to enter the competition?" Lily nodded, then hesitated. "But would you come to that show too, even if it's on a business day?" "I'll be there," John promised. "Front row, with pink socks." A small commotion interrupted their moment as Alex, in his excitement, knocked into a display easel. Sarah rushed to steady it while Ethan calculated the physics of why it hadn't fallen. Emily moved to help restore order, her practiced hand at managing chaos coming into play. John found himself in the middle of this beautiful mess of family life, so different from his ordered corporate world. His phone buzzed in his pocket, probably another urgent message from the office, but he ignored it. Instead, he listened as Lily explained each painting's story, as Alex incorporated dinosaurs into every discussion, as Ethan offered artistic analysis beyond his years, and as Sarah slowly, almost imperceptibly, relaxed her guard. Later, as they prepared to leave, John noticed Lily yawning. Without thinking, he scooped her up in his arms. She nestled against his shoulder, reminding him of how much physical affection he'd missed giving and receiving these past years. "Dad," she murmured sleepily. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm glad you came back." The simple statement hit him with the force of a tidal wave. "I'm glad too," he whispered, holding her a little tighter. Emily caught his eye over Lily's head, her expression soft. In that moment, John realized that success wasn't measured in market shares or profit margins. It was measured in children's artwork, in tired hugs, in pink socks worn to keep a promise, and in the gradual healing of a family finding its way back together. As they walked to their cars, John's Tesla and Emily's practical minivan, the other children fell into step around them. Sarah walked close to Emily, while the twins debated the artistic merits of dinosaur art. They looked, John realized, like a real family. Not perfect, not without their scars and complications, but real and growing stronger. "Ice cream?" he suggested, remembering Emily once telling him that celebrations always called for ice cream. The children's enthusiastic response, even Sarah's careful smile, told him he'd made the right call. Some business emails would go unanswered tonight, some deals would wait until tomorrow, but right now, John Chen was exactly where he needed to be, surrounded by artwork, love, and the family he was finally learning to deserve. The call came. At 3:47 a.m., Emily's voice was tense, controlled, but John could hear the worry underneath. "Alex has a fever, it's high, 103.2. Ethan's starting to show symptoms too. I need to take them to the emergency room, but Lily and Sarah..." "I'm on my way," John said, already pulling on clothes. He'd been up late dealing with the Asian markets, but that didn't matter now. "Text me the hospital address. I'll be there." In 20 minutes, the night doorman of Emily's building barely blinked as John rushed past. He found Emily in the living room, trying to comfort both twins while simultaneously packing a hospital bag. Alex lay listless on the couch, a worrying sight for a boy usually in constant motion. Ethan sat in an armchair, his face flushed, hugging, his favorite book like a shield. "The Children's Hospital on 68th, Emily said without preamble. "Sarah and Lily are sleeping. There's a list of emergency numbers on the fridge and..." "Go," John said firmly. "I've got this." He watched as she gathered the twins, his heart aching at how small and vulnerable they looked. After they left, John sank into the armchair Ethan had vacated, his mind racing. He had a crucial board meeting in 4 hours, followed by a potential investor lunch that could make or break their next expansion. His phone buzzed with messages from Hong Kong about a developing crisis with their main supplier. A small sound made him look up. Sarah stood in the hallway, her face showing a mixture of worry and determination. "Is Alex going to be okay?" "Your mum's taking him and Ethan to the doctors," John explained gently. "They'll make sure both boys get better." Sarah padded over to sit beside him. "Last time they were sick, Mum lost her job because she had to stay home with them. She cried when she thought we couldn't hear." The simple statement hit John like a physical blow. How many times had Emily faced these crises alone? How many sacrifices had she made while he'd been chasing his fortune? His phone buzzed again. Without looking at it, he switched it off. "How about we make some hot chocolate?" he suggested. "Your mom once told me it's good medicine for worried hearts." Sarah studied him for a moment, then nodded. Together, they moved to the kitchen, where John discovered that making hot chocolate for a 5-year-old was an exact science. The milk had to be heated just right, the chocolate stirred in a specific pattern, and the marshmallows arranged with precise care. Lily joined them as they worked, drawn by the sweet smell and the quiet activity. She climbed onto a kitchen chair, her art smock worn over her pajamas. "Can I draw something for Alex and Ethan, to make them feel better?" "That's a wonderful idea," John said. He helped her set up her art supplies at the kitchen table, marveling at how naturally these small parental actions were beginning to feel. His watch showed 5:30 a.m. when Emily finally called. "It's strep throat," she reported, sounding exhausted. "They're giving them antibiotics. We should be home in a few hours." "Take your time," John said. "We're okay here." He looked around. At the kitchen, where Sarah was carefully making toast for everyone, her newest responsibility, she'd informed him, and Lily was putting the finishing touches on get-well cards for her brothers. After hanging up, John sent 3 emails, one to his board rescheduling the meeting, one to the potential investors suggesting a video call next week, and one to his executive team implementing the emergency family leave protocols they'd recently developed. Then he helped Sarah pack lunch boxes for school, making sure to include extra cookies for bravery. He helped Lily pick out clothes that matched mostly, and managed a reasonable attempt at braiding Sarah's hair. As they waited for Emily to return with the twins, he read stories, answered questions about germs, consulting his phone for accuracy, and learned that Lily's stuffed elephant was actually a certified doctor for sick brothers. The sound of keys in the door brought them all running. Alex and Ethan looked pale but better, clutching matching pharmacy bags and wearing "Brave Patient" stickers. Emily looked like she might collapse. "Board meeting?" she asked John, noting his presence hours after she'd expected him to leave. "Rescheduled," he said simply. "Some things are more important." Sarah helped her brothers to the couch, while Lily presented her get-well artwork. John guided Emily to the kitchen, where a fresh cup of coffee waited. "When was the last time you ate?" She shook her head, too tired to remember. "The investors can wait, family can't." Emily looked at him for a long moment. "You're really doing this, aren't you? Actually choosing them first?" "Every time," John promised. "No matter what." "Daddy," Lily's voice called from the living room, "can you make hot chocolate for Alex and Ethan too? With extra marshmallows for medicine?" "Be right there, sweetheart." He turned back to Emily. "Get some rest. I've got this shift." As he headed to the kitchen, John heard the ping of his phone receiving new messages. The Hong Kong crisis would still be waiting. The investors might be annoyed. The board would need reassurance, but in the living room, 4 children waited for hot chocolate and comfort. Sarah was arranging pillows for her brothers with scientific precision. Lily was explaining the healing power of her artwork. Alex and Ethan were already looking better, their eyes brightening at the prospect of their father's newfound hot chocolate expertise. And Emily was watching him with something that looked almost like trust. The choice, John realized, wasn't really a choice at all. It was simply recognizing what had always been true, that no business success could ever matter more than these moments, these children, this chance to finally be the father they deserved. He rolled up his sleeves and reached for the cocoa powder, ready to prove once again that he meant every word. Recovery meant different things to different members of the Chen family. For Alex, it meant gradually returning to his usual energetic self, though now his dinosaur stories included detailed accounts of how T-Rexes dealt with sore throats. For Ethan, it meant quiet hours with his books, methodically tracking his and his twins' temperature readings in a small notebook he'd designated for medical research. For John, it meant learning to navigate the delicate balance of work and family in an entirely new way. He had transformed his penthouse's home office into a remote command center, allowing him to stay close to the children while managing his company's needs. The sight of his elegant desk, now cluttered with children's drawings and half-finished cups of hot chocolate, would have shocked his former self. But it was Emily who faced perhaps the biggest adjustment. After years of handling every crisis alone, she found herself with a partner who not only wanted to help, but was proving increasingly capable of doing so. "You don't have to stay," she said one afternoon, watching John set up his laptop at her kitchen table while the twins napped on the couch. "They're past the worst of it." "I know," he replied, not looking up from where he was simultaneously typing an email and reaching out to steady Lily's glass of juice before it could spill. "But I want to." Sarah, who had appointed herself official family health monitor, appeared with her clipboard. "Alex's temperature is normal," she reported seriously. "Ethan's is 0.1 degrees higher, but still within acceptable range." "Thank you, Dr. Sarah," John said gravely, fighting a smile at her professional demeanor. "What's your recommendation?" "They can have ice cream later," she declared after careful consideration, "for medicinal purposes." Emily watched this exchange from the kitchen doorway, her heart doing complicated things in her chest. The John she'd known 5 years ago would have delegated childcare to an army of nannies. This John was learning the exact right temperature for a forehead, the specific way Ethan needed his pillows arranged, and Alex's preferred flavor of throat lozenges. "Mom," Lily tugged at her sleeve, "can I show you something?" Emily followed, her youngest, to the living room, where Lily's art supplies had colonized the coffee table. The little girl pulled out a drawing she'd clearly been working on for some time. "It's for Daddy's office," Lily explained proudly. "See, I drew his computer, but I made it happy with a smile. And there's his coffee cup with hearts coming out because he puts love in everything now, like you do." Emily blinked back sudden tears. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Can we go give it to him, to his big office in the sky?" From the kitchen, John's voice carried as he conducted a video conference. "Yes, the Asia expansion is proceeding on schedule, but we're also implementing those family-friendly policies we discussed. I just experienced firsthand how crucial they are." Emily made a decision. "Why don't we all go, once the boys are feeling better?" Lily's face lit up. "Really? To the big building where Daddy works? Really?" Emily smiled, remembering the first time she'd visited that office 5 years ago, trying desperately to tell John about her pregnancy. She'd never made it past the reception desk. Later that evening, after the children were in bed, Emily found John still at the kitchen table, his laptop finally closed. He was reviewing Sarah's meticulous health charts with an expression of amused pride. "She gets that organizing streak from you," Emily said, sitting across from him, "and her caring heart from you." John set down the papers. "Emily, I've been thinking, this apartment—" "Don't," she held up a hand. "We're managing fine. The boys share a room the size of my closet. Sarah does her homework on her bed because there's no space for a desk. Lily's art supplies are everywhere because there's nowhere to store them properly." He leaned forward. "Let me help. Not because you need it, but because they deserve it, because we can give them more together than either of us can alone." Emily was quiet for a long moment. "I saw a house," she finally admitted. "In Forest Hills. It needs work, but it has a yard, room for a swing set, maybe even a garden. I drive by it sometimes and imagine—" "Show me," John said simply. The next morning, while the twins were still drowsy with medication and the girls were at school, John's real estate agent called with news. The Forest Hills house was theirs if they wanted it. Emily protested the price, but John was adamant. "Think of it as back payment," he said quietly, "for all the support I should have been providing these past 5 years." When they told the children that evening, the reactions were exactly what they should have been. Sarah immediately began planning room assignments with architectural precision. Ethan calculated the optimal furniture arrangement for each space. Alex ran around the apartment, demonstrating where he would put his dinosaur collection in the new house, and Lily drew picture after picture of their future home, each one filled with light and love and family. That night, after everything had settled, Emily found John still up, looking through old photos on his phone. She recognized herself in them, young and in love, from their college days. "I was so stupid," he said without looking up. "I thought success meant one thing. Corner office, global empire, name in the headlines." He smiled ruefully. "Turns out it looks more like crayon drawings on my desk and knowing exactly how to make 4 different kinds of hot chocolate." Emily sat beside him, close enough to see the photos, but not quite touching. "You were always capable of this," she said softly, "of being this man, this father. You just needed to believe it was worth more than everything else. I know that now." He turned to face her. "Thank you for giving me the chance to learn it." In the children's rooms, 4 steady breaths created a rhythm of peace. In the kitchen, Sarah's health charts documented a family healing in more ways than one. And in the space between 2 people who had once lost each other, something new was, slowly, carefully beginning to grow. It wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, adjustments, moments of doubt. But as Emily looked at the man beside her, this newer, softer version of John, who could run a global corporation while checking homework and soothing fevers, she felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. The elevator, ride to the top floor of Chen Technologies, was an adventure in itself. Alex pressed his face against the glass wall, watching the city shrink beneath them. Ethan carefully counted each floor they passed, while Lily clutched her portfolio of artwork, excitement making her bounce on her toes. Sarah, as usual, maintained her protective watch over her siblings while trying to hide her own amazement. Emily stood slightly apart, memories washing over her. The last time she'd been in this elevator, she'd been carrying Sarah, though she hadn't known it yet. Now, here she was again, with all 4 children and a very different John Chen. "Welcome to my other home," John said as the doors opened onto the executive floor. The space was exactly what one would expect from a successful tech company, sleek, modern, and expensive. But there were subtle changes since Emily had last seen it. Family photos now dotted John's desk, not just the standard corporate awards. A corner of his vast office had been transformed into a children's area, complete with a small table, art supplies, and, Emily noticed with amusement, a carefully curated collection of dinosaur books. "Is this really where you work, Daddy?" Lily asked, her eyes wide as she took in the floor-to-ceiling windows. "It is," John replied, "but it's been missing something very important." He guided them to his desk, where 5 new frames stood empty. "I thought maybe you could help me fix that." Lily immediately understood, pulling out her latest family portraits. "Which one should we use?" "Why don't we let everyone vote?" John suggested, spreading out the artwork. Even his executive assistant, Ms. Wong, was invited to participate in the selection process. As the children debated the merits of each drawing, Emily noticed other changes around the office. The conference room now had a digital photo frame, cycling through pictures of the children. A family-first policy statement held prominent placement on the wall, and John's infamous "Do Not Disturb" light now had a handwritten addendum. "Unless you're under 4 feet tall." "Mom, look!" Alex called from the window. "I can see our new house from here." Emily joined him and John quietly pointed out the Forest Hills neighborhood in the distance. The renovations would start next week, transforming the old house into their new home, their home. The thought still felt strange. "Mr. Chen," Ms. Wong appeared at the door. "The board members are asking if you're still available for lunch." Before John could respond, Sarah spoke up. "We're supposed to have a picnic in Central Park. You promised." Emily watched John, curious how he would handle this collision of his worlds. Without hesitation, he turned to his assistant. "Please, inform the board that I have a prior commitment with my family. However," he glanced at Emily, who nodded slightly. "They're welcome to join us in the park if they'd like to meet the real future of Chen Technologies." Ms. Wong's usually professional facade cracked into a smile. "I'll pass that along, sir." The rest of the morning passed in a blur of activity. Ethan became fascinated with the office's automated systems, pestering John's IT director with increasingly complex questions. Alex discovered that the smooth office floors were perfect for demonstrating dinosaur movement patterns. Lily set up an impromptu art studio in John's private conference room, determined to capture the city view in her unique style. But it was Sarah who surprised everyone. She sat quietly in John's chair, watching how the office functioned. "You help people here, don't you, Daddy?" she finally asked. John knelt beside her. "I try to. We make things that make people's lives easier." Sarah nodded seriously. "Like how you made our lives easier by coming back." The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Emily felt her breath catch, but John answered with simple honesty. "No, sweetheart, you all made my life better by letting me come back. I just wish I'd known sooner what really mattered." Later, as they packed up for their picnic, Emily noticed a new addition to John's desk, a handmade sign in Sarah's careful writing that read, "World's Learning Dad." Not best dad or greatest dad, but learning dad. It was perfectly Sarah, honest, hopeful, and wise beyond her years. The board members did join them in the park, much to everyone's surprise. These powerful business figures found themselves drawn into Alex's elaborate dinosaur stories, challenged by Ethan's logical puzzles, moved by Lily's artistic vision, and subtly evaluated by Sarah's watchful eyes. Emily sat on the picnic blanket, watching as her children charmed some of the business world's most formidable players. John sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "They're amazing," he said softly. "All of them. How did you do it?" "One day at a time," Emily replied, "just like you're doing now." A gentle breeze carried the sound of their children's laughter across the park. Alex was teaching a very serious-looking board member the proper way to roar like a T-Rex. Ethan was explaining his theory of efficient sandwich distribution to the CFO. Lily had the marketing director, posing for a portrait while Sarah was watching everything, including her parents sitting close together on the blanket. When she caught Emily's eye, Sarah gave a small, approving nod. And Emily realized that while John was learning to be a father, they were all learning something new, how to be a family. The morning of moving day dawned bright and clear. Emily stood in her empty apartment, touching walls that had witnessed 5 years of struggle and joy, of first steps and midnight feedings, of tears and triumphs. Each scuff mark and crayon streak told a story, their story. "Mom?" Sarah appeared, beside her, small hand slipping into Emily's. "Are you sad?" Emily squeezed her daughter's hand. "A little. This place has been our home for a long time, but the new house will be bigger," Sarah reasoned, "and Daddy helped pick it. That means he's staying, right?" Before Emily could answer, the sound of a moving truck backing up drew their attention. John's voice carried from outside, directing the movers. He had insisted on handling the logistics himself, though Emily had been amused to discover that his idea of handling it included a spreadsheet color-coded by room and a 3-dimensional digital model of furniture placement. "Sarah!" Alex's excited voice echoed through the empty apartment. "Come see! The moving truck is huge! It could fit at least 3 brachiosauruses." Sarah gave her mother one more understanding look before joining her brother at the window. Emily watched them, marveling at how her children had adapted to the changes in their lives. Each in their own way, they had begun to embrace John's presence, though not without the occasional test or moment of uncertainty. The move itself became an exercise in organized chaos. John's carefully planned system met the reality of 4 excited children and a lifetime of accumulated memories. Lily insisted on carrying her art supplies herself, resulting in a trail of crayons from the apartment to the truck. Ethan methodically labeled every box he could reach with detailed contents, lists. Alex turned the empty rooms into an impromptu dinosaur migration simulation. It was Sarah who found the box of old photographs in the back of Emily's closet. "Mom, look," she called out, holding up a faded picture. "Is this you and Daddy?" Emily and John both came to look. The photo showed them in college, young and carefree, John's arm around Emily's shoulders as they smiled at the camera. Neither of them could have imagined then how their path would wind. "We should frame it," John said quietly. "Put it in the new house, if that's okay." Emily studied his face. So different now from the young man in the photo, yet somehow more like the person she'd always believed he could be. "Yes," she agreed. "I think that would be good." The drive to Forest Hills felt like crossing a boundary between old life and new. The children pressed against the car windows, watching their familiar neighborhood fade into tree-lined streets and larger houses. When they pulled up to their new home, even Sarah couldn't maintain her usual composure. "It's like a castle," Lily breathed, staring up at the large Victorian house with its wraparound porch and bay windows. "It needs some work," Emily cautioned, noting the peeling paint and overgrown garden. "It's perfect," John said firmly. "It has good bones, just like our family. We'll make it beautiful together." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. Furniture was arranged and rearranged, boxes were unpacked and sorted. John's efficiency met Emily's practicality, creating a workflow that actually worked. The children explored every corner of their new domain, their excitement filling the old house with new energy. By late afternoon, exhaustion began to set in. They ordered pizza, a moving day tradition Emily had always maintained, and sat on the floor of their new living room, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and possibility. "Can I paint my room?" Lily asked around a mouthful of pizza. "Of course," John replied. "Any color you like. Even dinosaur green." Alex perked up. "We'll look at paint samples tomorrow," Emily promised, sharing a smile with John over the children's heads. As the day wound down, Emily found herself in what would be her new bedroom, unpacking clothes into an antique dresser John had insisted on having restored for her. A soft knock at the door revealed John, holding a small package. "I know we said no house gifts," he began apologetically, "but this isn't exactly a gift, it's a return." Emily opened the package to find a familiar silver picture frame. Inside was a photograph she'd sent him years ago, one of her pregnant with Sarah, glowing and hopeful. She'd mailed it to his office in Hong Kong, along with a letter he'd never read. "I found it last week," John said quietly, "in a box of unopened mail my assistant had saved. I was so focused on building something big, I missed seeing something growing." Emily traced the edge of the frame. "We can't change the past, John." "No," he agreed, "but we can learn from it. Build something better." He gestured around them. "That's what this house is about. Not just 4 walls and a roof, but a foundation, a new start." A crash from downstairs interrupted the moment, followed by Alex's voice. "It wasn't the dinosaur's fault." They shared a laugh, the tension breaking. "Should we go see what that was about?" Emily suggested. "Together," John nodded. They found the children in the kitchen, surrounded by pots and pans that had escaped from a poorly packed box. Instead of chaos, however, they discovered an impromptu band. Lily was using pot lids as cymbals. Alex had turned a large pot into a drum, and even Ethan was tapping a rhythm on an upturned bowl. Sarah conducted them all with a wooden spoon, her serious expression barely hiding her joy. Looking at their makeshift orchestra, Emily realized that this was what making a home really meant. Not perfect organization or expensive furnishings, but the messy, beautiful process of building something together. One day at a time, one memory at a time, one moment of shared laughter at a time. The house would need work, but then again, so had their family, and both, she was beginning to believe, were worth every bit of effort. 3 weeks into life in the new house, John found himself facing an unexpected crisis. It wasn't a business emergency or a household repair. It was Sarah, sitting alone on the porch swing, refusing to come in for dinner. "She won't tell me." "What's wrong?" Emily said softly when John arrived home from work. "She's been out there for an hour." Through the window, they could see their eldest daughter, her small figure silhouetted against the setting sun. Gone was her usual composed demeanor, replaced by something more vulnerable. "Let me try," John said, loosening his tie. The porch swing creaked gently as he sat beside Sarah, maintaining what he'd learned was her preferred amount of personal space. They sat in silence for several minutes, watching the neighborhood settle into evening. "I heard Tommy's dad at soccer practice," Sarah finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said you'll leave again. That rich people always do." John felt his heart constrict. "What do you think about that?" Sarah twisted her hands in her lap. I think I'm scared because I'm starting to love you. And if you leave now, it'll hurt more than when you weren't here before." The raw honesty of her words struck John like a physical blow. Before he could respond, Sarah continued, her words tumbling out as if she'd held them back too long. "I remember when I was little, watching Mom cry when she thought we were sleeping. I remember helping her write letters to you that never got answered. I remember promising myself I would take care of everyone because no one else would." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with tears. "But now you're here and you're trying so hard, and sometimes I forget to be careful and I just feel happy. And that's scary." John gently pulled his daughter closer, his own eyes wet. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "Scared I won't be good. Enough scared I'll make mistakes. But being scared of losing something, that just means it's precious. And you, Sarah, you and your siblings and your mother, you're the most precious things in my world." Inside the house, life continued its new, normal rhythm. They could hear Alex's excited voice explaining dinosaur facts to Ethan, who was probably only half listening while working on his latest mathematical puzzle. Lily's humming drifted from the kitchen, where she was likely drawing while Emily prepared dinner. "I gave up my old apartment," John said quietly. "Sold my penthouse too." Sarah looked up sharply. "Really? Really? This is my only home now. Our home." He turned to face her fully. "I can't undo the past 5 years, Sarah. I can't take away the hurt or the memories of those empty mailboxes. But I can promise you this, I'm not that man anymore. I'm your father, and that's the most important job I'll ever have." A small hand slipped into his. "Can you promise something else? Anything? Can you promise to tell me if things get hard, before you think about leaving, so maybe we can fix it together?" John squeezed her hand, marveling at the wisdom in her request. "I promise. And you know what? That goes both ways. If you're ever scared or worried, you can tell me. You don't have to be strong all the time. That's what parents are for." For the first time that evening, Sarah smiled. "Is that why Mum says I'm just like you? Because we both try too hard to be strong?" "Maybe," John chuckled. "But you're better at it than I ever was. You know why?" Sarah shook her head. "Because you never forgot what matters most. I had to learn it all over again." The porch swing swayed gently as they sat together, watching the first stars appear. From inside came the sound of Emily calling everyone to dinner, followed by the familiar chaos of family life. "Ready to go in?" John asked. Sarah stood up but then paused. "Daddy, sometimes I remember things from when I was really little. like a voice reading stories or someone singing. Was that you? John's throat tightened as he remembered those precious early months before ambition had led him astray. Yes, I used to read to you every night. Goodnight Moon was your favorite. Could you maybe read to all of us tonight, like a family? I'd love nothing more. As they walked inside together, John realized that healing wasn't just about grand gestures or making up for lost time. Sometimes it was about small moments like this. A conversation on a porch swing, an honest exchange of fears, a bedtime story shared. The kitchen was warm and bright, filled with the smell of dinner and the sound of siblings squabbling over table settings. Emily looked up as they entered, her eyes questioning. John gave her a subtle nod. They were okay. Different maybe and still growing, but okay. Sarah, Emily said, would you help Lily set the table? She's put all the forks on the wrong side again. Actually, Sarah replied, I think Alex should help. I want to sit next to Daddy tonight. The simple statement carried more weight than its casual delivery suggested. Emily's eyes met John's over their daughter's head, sharing a moment of understanding, another small step forward, another piece of trust rebuilt. Later that night, as John read Goodnight Moon to all 4 children crowded onto Sarah's bed, he felt Emily watching from the doorway. The words were the same as they had been 5 years ago, but everything else had changed. He was no longer reading to prove he could be a good father. He was reading because he was one, learning and growing every day, just like their children. And when Sarah fell asleep holding his hand, John understood that some promises weren't just words. They were choices you made every day, small moments of courage that added up to a life worth living. 6 months after moving day, the Victorian house in Forest Hills had transformed into a true home. The peeling paint had been replaced, with warm colors chosen through extensive family debate. The overgrown garden now bloomed with flowers Lily had helped plant, though a corner remained deliberately wild as a dinosaur habitat at Alex's insistence. A tire swing hung from the sturdy oak tree, its installation supervised by Ethan's careful calculations of angles and weight distribution. It was Saturday morning, and Emily stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching John teach Sarah how to ride a bike without training wheels. Their daughter's face showed intense concentration as she wobbled down the sidewalk, her father jogging beside her, one hand hovering protectively near her back. "Mom!" Alex's voice broke through her reverie. "Is it time yet?" Emily checked. The clock. "Almost. Why don't you and Ethan start bringing the chairs out to the backyard? Today was special. Not just another Saturday, but a celebration." The community center where John and Emily had reconnected was hosting a job fair, and this time Emily wasn't going as an applicant. Her new publishing house had asked her to represent them, to help others find their way just as she had. But first, they had their own event to host. The backyard gradually filled with people, John's board members and their families, Emily's colleagues, neighbors and school friends. The children darted between groups, Alex leading dinosaur tours of his wild garden corner, Ethan explaining the mathematical precision of the tire swing's arc, Lily proudly showing off her latest artwork displayed along the fence. Sarah remained by the front gate, greeting guests with a poise that made both her parents hide proud smiles. She had appointed herself official family ambassador, a role she took as seriously as everything else. "Is that the community center director?" Emily asked, spotting a familiar face. John nodded. "I invited her. Seemed right, considering where this all started." They had transformed the backyard into a space that reflected their family's journey. String lights twinkled in the trees, and tables held framed photographs showing their story. The old apartment, the first office visit, moving day, and countless small moments in between. A special display featured Lily's artwork, chronicling their family's growth through a child's loving eyes. When everyone had arrived, John cleared his throat, gathering attention. He stood on the back porch steps, Emily beside him, their children arranged around them like a living photograph. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "6 months ago, I thought I was returning to New York to expand my business empire. Instead, I found something far more valuable: my family." He looked at each of his children in turn. "I found a daughter who taught me true leadership, twins who showed me different ways of seeing the world, and a little artist who helped me understand what really matters." His hand found Emily's, their fingers intertwining naturally. "And I found that sometimes the biggest successes aren't measured in dollars or market shares, but in morning hugs and bedtime stories, in bike riding lessons and dinosaur math problems, in crayon drawings and trust rebuilt day by day." Emily stepped forward then, her voice clear and strong. "When I went to that job fair 6 months ago, I thought I was alone. I'd been alone for so long, I'd forgotten how to be anything else. But life has a way of surprising you, of bringing things full circle when you least expect it. That's why we wanted to gather everyone here today," John continued. "Not just to celebrate how far we've come, but to announce where we're going next." He squeezed Emily's hand. "The Chen Family Foundation will be opening its doors next month, focused on supporting single parents and helping families reconnect. Every community center in New York will have resources, job training, and support services. Because everyone deserves a chance to find their way back home." The announcement was met with applause, but it was the children's reactions that meant the most. Sarah's proud smile, Ethan's thoughtful nod, Alex's excited bounce, and Lily's spontaneous hug captured the true meaning of the moment. As their guests mingled and celebrated, Emily and John found a quiet moment by the oak tree. The tire swings swayed gently in the breeze, casting shifting shadows on the grass. "Did you ever imagine this?" Emily asked softly. "That day in the community center when you first saw them?" John watched as Sarah helped Lily climb onto the swing while the twins debated the best pushing technique. "I couldn't have imagined it," he replied. "I didn't know enough about love then to dream this big. And now I dream bigger." He turned to face her. "I dream about science fairs and soccer games, about graduation ceremonies and family vacations. I dream about watching them grow and knowing I get to be part of it. I dream about making up for lost time while celebrating every new moment." Emily leaned against him slightly. "They say you can't change the past." "No," John agreed, "but you can learn from it. You can let it shape you into someone better." He smiled as Alex demonstrated a particularly dramatic dinosaur roar, making a group of board members jump. "They shaped me into someone better." The day continued, filled with laughter and stories, with children playing and adults connecting. The Chen family's journey had become more than just their own story. It had grown into something larger, a beacon of hope for others who might need to find their way back home. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across their transformed backyard, John and Emily gathered their children close. Sarah, no longer needing to be the strong one all the time, snuggled into her father's side. The twins, each unique yet perfectly complementary, shared knowing looks that spoke of schemes and adventures to come. And Lily, her artist's soul shining bright, began to hum a tune that somehow felt like both an ending and a beginning. They were not a perfect family. They still had challenges to face, trust to strengthen, moments of doubt to overcome. But they were together, learning and growing, writing their story one day at a time. And in the end, that was the